Good evening, everyone. My name is Leona Rollins. I am the Housing Services Manager for the City of Ventura. And I would like to welcome you to our first Westside Housing Forum. We are super excited to be here. We will be having presentations and a panel discussion regarding landlord and tenant rights, fair housing, pathways to home ownership, as well as affordable housing developments throughout the city. The Housing Services Division is super excited to be hosting this event this evening, and I would like to take this opportunity to introduce you to my amazing team, which includes Jenny Buckingham and Lee Sherman. Okay, so throughout the forum, we will be issuing out index cards so that you can go ahead and have the opportunity to ask any question that you may have throughout the presentations, and we will answer those questions during our Q&A segment, okay? So once again, thank you so much for coming out to the Westside Housing Forum, and we're gonna begin our presentation with Christian Nunez from CAUSE. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. First I'd like to thank Jenny, Leona, and Lee from the city for being our contact. They reached out to us, and we're really excited to be here to be talking about Ventura housing issues, right, and what people have at their disposal if they're at risk of being displaced. Alongside some Ventura housing info, we also have some survey results that we found a couple of years ago. So my name's Christian Nunez. I'm a policy advocate with CAUSE. I work here on the west side of Ventura. But I'm also a Ventura resident here on the Avenue 2. I've lived here for almost all of my life. So even though I'm here to show you a lot of information, a lot of statistics on the housing issues that we see today, as a resident, I've seen it with my own eyes. The West Side has changed dramatically, and we think it's great that we're having these conversations today. So thank you. So housing and affordability. I'm not going to go over these in depth, but here are some of the things over the course of a couple of years that have amounted to what we're experiencing today on the west side of Ventura. If we can go on to the next slide, actually, please. Just a quick timeline, right? So looking at 2018, the market crash affected the economy a lot. The Thomas fires, that took out a lot of homes, actually, in California and in Ventura, which in turn limited the housing stock that we have at our disposal. In 2020, COVID-19 just inflated the housing market all over, not just in Ventura, but everywhere. And in 2022, we continue to see the increase of rents and uncertainty of how this could be fixed. So in 2019, CAUSE conducted a study with about 500 participants or renters. And out of that study, 124 were particular from Ventura. So these are what these numbers are saying. And I know it's a lot of numbers, but I just want to highlight that out of 124 renters, they stated, or it shows that they make, homeowners make about more than half of what the median income is as of 2019. It also shows that renters have the most burden when it comes to spending. About 30% of their income goes to rent alone. And surprisingly, renters, 32% of those are with children, right? More than what homeowners have, which was really surprising. So rent hikes. This is just a quick graph of the correlation, right, between average monthly rent in the city of Ventura on the west side and average vacancy rate, right? Like how many available units we have in the city and how expensive they are today. So just looking a couple of years back, if you look from 2014, 15, and 16, you see a lot of fluctuation. But now in 2021, we see the vacancy rate is really low, but prices are just going through the roof regardless, right? They're going really up. So there's less units, but prices are at all-time high. Could we get the next slide, please? So going back to those 124 surveys that we got from renters, we asked what happens when tenants received rent increases. So this is what people stated that they had to cut out of their daily expenses in their lives in order to make ends meet for rent. Some of the biggest things that were brought up were having to cut on food and health insurance. People are choosing to not buy the proper food or maybe get health insurance in order to cover the cost of living here in Ventura. Some people had to move to different units, get different jobs, ask people to move in with them in order to make ends meet. And out of those surveys, Out of those people that were part of the survey, 41% of those said that within the last year, their rent went up by $100 or more, which is a lot. And 9% of those were evicted within the past 5. Can we get the next slide, please? So this is just another graph, and this is from Ventura County 2020 Homeless Count and Survey. And this just shows a correlation between homelessness and the housing market here in Ventura. So from 2020 to 2022, we've seen a 25% increase in both adults and children counted as homeless during a point in time in between those 2 years. So, we know that it's an issue just by these numbers alone. Within the past 2 years, the risk of homelessness has gone up dramatically. Could we go to the next slide, please? Okay, so where can a family move if they need to relocate and if they're either being priced out or being displaced from their homes here in the city of Ventura? So just as an example, just for tonight's presentation, what we did is we tried to look for, on Zillow specifically, the cheapest units available to rent here on the avenue. So we have a unit for about $1,600 here on Wall Street, right up this hill, and we have a home for about $2,100. Notice that both of these units are 400 square feet. So I don't know if you all can visualize 400 square feet, but that's nothing for that amount of money. That's a lot. And mind you, a lot of people are moving in with families, right? This is for a single person or maybe a couple. This could be doable, but fitting a family of 4 would be a lot, right? And these are the cheapest listings. So now if we look, and this is as of 2021, all occupations, the median annual salary in Ventura for all occupations is around $64,000 a year. So if an individual wanted to rent the $1,600 unit, about 30% of their income would go directly into that unit. And alternatively, if they wanted to get the unit on the right, the 2,100 unit, it'd be around 40% of their income, which is a lot, right? Almost half. Now, if we take into consideration that this is the median annual salary income, and if we look at other professions or careers, such as people who are in the food serving business or retail who do not make $64,000 a year and make around $3,500 or $35,000, if a person wanted to rent the same unit, $1,600, and they earn $35,000 a year, that'd be around 54% of their annual income. And if they wanted to rent the unit on the right, 71% of their income. That's just not sustainable. It's ridiculous, quite frankly. And if someone's being displaced and being priced out, trying to find an affordable place to live in Ventura is very difficult at the moment. Could we get the next slide, please? Okay. So what the Tenant Protection Act, AB 1482, does offer us some things, right? Currently, rents have increased, but under AB 1482, we are either capped at 5% plus CPI or 10%, whatever is lowest. So what does that mean for Ventura? Hypothetically, if inflation here was around 2 or 3%, the 5% plus CPI would apply. So we would be looking at around 7 to 8% rent cap as of April 2022. But because Ventura is more than at a 2% inflation rate, closer to 5, 7, 8, we are capped at 10% currently under AB 1482. But if that was not in place, we would be at maybe 12, 13, 14. So to put that into perspective, can we go to the last slide one more time, please? If someone is living, let's use the unit on the right-hand side. If someone has lived in that unit for over a year, more than 12 months, a landlord is allowed to increase their rent every year by 10%. So that would be, if they did that 10%, it'd be additional $210 monthly following their first year. So that'd be like waking up and having a new car payment, right? Like, where did that come from? And that's very scary, right? A lot of renters can't keep up with that. A lot of people, I can't keep up with that. That's a lot. So just to put that into perspective for what that kind of means. Can we go forward, please? 2 slides. So 1482 eviction protections. So right now they were introduced, but they're temporary until 2030 here in California. If a tenant, if a tenant has resided in their unit for more than 12 months, then the owner must have a just cause reason for initiating an eviction. Owners must pay a relocation allowance equal to 1 month's rent within 15 days of eviction, or waive last month's rent for no-fault evictions. And this money may not be taken from security deposits or other fees. So in the following slide, I'll explain a little bit more about just cause and all these things. So, no-fault eviction protections and relocation assistance. So a no-fault eviction is when a tenant has to be, or is being asked to be, like, leave from their unit, but it's not their fault. They didn't do anything wrong. It's just, there may be a couple of reasons why a landlord might want their unit back. And the four major ones, right, are an owner is moving back into their home, a major remodel, right, like they need to fix something and it's gonna take a long time and people can't live there while they're doing all that work. If they decide to remove their unit from the rental market, so the LS Eviction Acts, or if it's reg tagged, meaning they can't live in that unit, it's not safe, it's unhealthy to live there. So those are the main reasons that you'll notice. And here in Ventura specifically, we just passed something that helps protect against major remodeling and evictions. So what do no-fault evictions protections do? They provide time, right? Warnings for tenants who are at risk. So that way they're not having to relocate from one day to the next. And it also means that landlords will have to pay a relocation fee if it's not their fault that they're moving them out. Ventura eviction protections for substantial remodels. This is what we currently have here in the city of Ventura. So Ventura tenants are entitled to relocation assistance when they're being displaced due to demolitions or substantial remodeling work that's not their fault. And that would mean that they get relocation assistance for 2 months from when the landlord gives them their tenancy notice. And alternatively, the landlord could waive those last 2 months of their rent instead. But tenants must receive the relocation assistance from their landlords within 15 days of receiving that termination notice. Ventura tenants also must be served with a just cause for an eviction where the landlord seeks to recover the rental unit for certain reasons. So that just means that the landlord must have certain paperwork and permits in place before giving them that notice, meaning that, okay, this is work that has to be done, so that's all we're asking for you to leave. They need to provide a tenant with 30 or 60-day advance notice, a copy of all permits as proof that they've done the work to get permission for the work that's going to be done. And they have to describe why, right? Why is it that we need to relocate you, remove you, or have you leave the place you're living in? So the main things. So one of the biggest things that we've noticed, and it's kind of an issue, right, is that there's no enforcement mechanism to make sure that people who are under AB 1482 are protected and covered in case they're being displaced from their homes. So although there's nothing in place right now, something that we found that could be effective is a rent registry. And all that is a list of rentals, and that could show which homes, which people are protected, and alternatively, which ones are not. So 1482 does not require a rent registry, so that's something that maybe the city or the county or another third-party agency would have to take on. But we don't have that right now, so we don't know the amount of people that are covered under AB 1482 or not. Having a database to find residents who are at risk or who are covered or don't could be a big help. It makes tracking data easier. Having resources, quick and accessible tenant information is really important, so that way we can reflect back on what's working, what isn't, how many people we should look out for, take care of here in the city. And another concern, right, is like, well, what if my personal information is out there for everyone to see? Well, that doesn't always have to be the case. For example, let's just say the city made a rent registry, they could make it private, right? Like only certain people can have access to it if they request it. So yeah, we just think something like that could help keep us on track that AB 1482 is being effective. Next slide, please. So the first couple of things are kind of just going over what I talked about. AB 1482 took effect as of 2020 in January 1st. It excludes some types of homes, like single-family homes, condos, affordable housing, and any housing built within the last 15 years. So there are exceptions. AB 1482 will limit increases across the state of California. Oh, sorry, I went over that. But as of today, Ventura is at 10%, right? And that's a lot. It's still a lot. And what we can do, certain cities in California have already done it, but we do, there's an opportunity to pass rent control, and we've seen it. Oxnard recently passed on rent control at 4%, which is pretty great. Santa Ana in LA has a rent control of 3%, and Pasadena has a rent cap at 75% of CPI. So we know that cities are aware this is an issue, and some cities have done their own thing. But yeah, this is what's currently what we have in Ventura and what we're seeing in other places. Okay, next slide, please. And lastly, I just wanted to include this right to counsel. And so for those of us, right, it just means, especially in certain cases legally, right, if you're in trouble, right, you're allowed to have an attorney. But this doesn't necessarily apply to this case. But we're thinking also that if there was something like a mechanism that was similar to this idea of the Sixth Amendment for tenants here in the city, it would make a huge difference. So what that could look like is somehow, right, allocating funds for legal defense. That's one of the biggest things that tenants need, right? They need legal representation in order to be able to exercise AB 1482 if their rights are being violated. And because many folks aren't able to afford a lawyer, it makes it really hard for them to stand up for themselves. So if a third party was able to, or if we somehow were able to allocate funds for folks, this could alleviate workload from the courts, right? A lot of lawyers can do a lot of that back-end work. They can talk, they can make agreements, so on and so forth. This could improve landlord and tenant relationships. Sometimes having those conversations with landlords or landlords with tenants is very difficult and can create a bad relationship, and that's something you don't want. So having attorneys act as intermediaries would be really great. And yeah, it would immediately prevent tenants from living on the streets, right? Increasing homelessness that's just been growing over the years, and it's something that we feel like very much needs to be addressed. So that's just something that we found and we thought was notable. Next slide, please. And lastly, we just wanted to leave you all with some resources. We also brought some flyers here on the table, but they're just mainly around housing here in the County of Ventura, in case anyone's interested. But yeah, I think that's all we have for you tonight. And I think there might be one more slide. All right, so addressing long-term and short-term solutions. So right, tenant protections, right? Trying to pass something locally. Legal representation for tenants, as I mentioned before. Access to educational resources, coming out to events like this, being able to inform themselves is great. And then long-term, right? Building more supply of just affordable housing. And yeah, just a lot of other things that probably could be done and achieved. So yeah, I think that's all I have for you all tonight. I'd like to thank you all so much for your time. Yeah, appreciate it.
Okay, so before I introduce our next presenter, I would like to give this opportunity for city staff that is attending the Westside Housing Forum tonight to take a stand up and wave out to all the audience. So we have Akbar, our acting city manager. We have Netta, our acting community development director. And we have Heather, who is our public information officer. We have to thank them all for coming out tonight. Give them a round of applause, everyone. So our next presenter is going to be Madeline McCormick with the Housing Rights Center.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Yeah, so my name is Madeline McCormick. Thank you so much for having me here. I'm with the Housing Rights Center. And tonight I'm going to talk about a little bit more about HRC's services and do a brief introduction to fair housing. Yeah, so a little bit about Housing Rights Center. Housing Rights Center is the nation's largest nonprofit civil rights organization dedicated to promoting and securing fair housing. And we were founded in 1968, which is the same year that Congress passed the Fair Housing Act. We do serve both Los Angeles and Ventura counties. Our offices are based in LA, but we do provide the same exact services to Ventura County, and our offices are actually still closed, so most of the services we offer are being provided virtually as well. We do offer these free services in many different languages. We also have our literature available in many languages, and our team would be more than happy to send that out to anyone if they're interested. Our contact information will be available at the end. I've also brought a lot of literature, so please stop by and pick up some flyers. All right, next slide, please. Thank you. So some of our free services include housing counseling. So this is a counseling hotline, and it services both tenants and landlords. And it's essentially free 15-minute appointments with our trained housing counselors. And they are trained to provide legal information, resources, referrals for tenants and landlords. And in addition to questions about fair housing, they're also trained to provide information about evictions, rent hikes. I know that Christian spoke a lot about the TPA, so if landlords want to call and ask, what's the legal amount I can raise the rent, things like that, our counselors are trained to provide all of that information. All that information is private and confidential. We also do recommend, we've heard that the line is often busy when people call. So if the line is busy, we do recommend that you leave a voicemail and provide your name, phone number, as well as the city that you're calling from, because that way our counselors have a little bit better chance of, or a little bit better prepared when they call you back. Another way to get in touch is by email. That can often be actually a faster way to get through to our counselors. That's info@housingrightcenter.org. And you can also just schedule an appointment directly through our website. If you go to housingrightcenter.org/help, you can scroll down and schedule a 15-minute appointment on our calendar, and those do fill up very quickly, so we do recommend as soon as you have an issue going on there and scheduling those appointments. We also have our discrimination and investigations team. So our counselors, our housing counselors that I was just speaking about, they're trained to screen for discrimination in housing. So when one of these counselors is alerted to a potential case of discrimination, they are often able to investigate those. And some of those outcomes might be filing a fair housing complaint with a government agency, such as, HUD or the California Civil Rights Department. Or it could also lead to being litigated in court, or we can also do mediation as well between tenants and landlords. And we also have our outreach team, which is the team that I'm on. I'm the Education and Outreach Initiative Program Manager. And we do all different kinds of events throughout the community and throughout both LA County and Ventura counties. And we do housing rights workshops. Today you'll just get a little glimpse of our housing rights workshops. We can talk for much longer than 20 minutes about fair housing. So if you are interested in scheduling a fair housing workshop, we are available and willing to schedule. We do weekly housing rights workshops, actually. So yeah, and then we also have, I do want to mention a really important resource, which is Project Place, and that's updated every month. It's a list of it's a very extensive list of affordable housing options throughout both LA County and Ventura County. And it is updated every month with new listings, and it's sent out via our email list as well. So if you're interested in receiving that, you can sign up for our email list. It is a really great resource. And we also have our weekly online workshops on our Facebook Live. Every Monday we do a housing rights Q&A at 1 p.m. So you can submit your questions there. They're all anonymous, and our outreach coordinators will answer those questions via Facebook Live. I'm going to discuss a little bit more about fair housing. So the Fair Housing Act makes it illegal to treat people differently based on race, the color of your skin, religion, sex, including gender and sexual orientation. It also includes national origin, which can be nationality or ethnicity, not necessarily tied to a specific country or place. Another protection is familial status, and that's an area that we see a lot of issues. And familial status is essentially covers a household with any minors, anyone under the age of 18, living with an adult who's been designated to care for them. That includes minors on the way via pregnancy, adoption, or foster care. And we also see a lot of issues, unfortunately, with disability in fair housing. And that includes both mental and physical disabilities. And I'll be able to provide a little bit more information about that later on. I also have some more information on that there as well. But it is a very broad category in fair housing, which I will address a little bit more later on. So those were the characteristics that are covered in federal law, so anywhere throughout the United States. But in the state of California, we also have additional protections in fair housing. These include ancestry, marital status, so whether somebody is married or not, gender identity or expression, things like pronouns, clothing, presentation. It also covers genetic information or medical information, as well as military and veteran status, as well, and source of income, which is another pretty prevalent issue that we're seeing. Source of income, essentially housing assistance, where tenants' legal source of income is coming from. A big issue we're seeing right now is with Section 8 housing choice vouchers. So California law actually protects based on source of income. So now that I've gone over some of the characteristics that are covered in fair housing law, I also wanted to go over some prohibited practices, right? What are the ways that we see this, these forms of discrimination happening? So those can include a refusal to sell or rent housing to someone based on those protected characteristics like race, religion, et cetera. Saying that housing is unavailable when really it is. And you know, a lot of times this can happen and tenants or prospective tenants aren't necessarily aware that they're being discriminated against, right? So part of HRC's work that we do is proactively testing against this discrimination. Another prohibited practice is different terms or rules. So an example of that could be you know, requiring a tenant pay a higher security deposit because they're undocumented, things like that. Also prohibited are discriminatory statements or advertising, things like no Section 8 vouchers accepted. That's actually an illegal practice. As well as threats, intimidation, harassment, and retaliation are also prohibited. I do want to, as I mentioned before, I do want to take a minute to talk about accommodations and modifications in disability law. So disability in fair housing is defined as the impact on the individual. So it's something either physical or mental that substantially limits any major life activities. And while the other characteristics that I spoke of are more designed around treating everyone equally, right? Treating everyone the same. People with disabilities are entitled to what's known as a reasonable accommodation or reasonable modification request. And I'm going to explain the differences between those two, but I also just wanted to say that our housing counselors, our Department of Counseling, can help with making those reasonable accommodation requests in case anybody would find that useful. So a reasonable accommodation request is a change to a service or a policy, right? So in those situations, the landlord would bear the cost. For example, if a tenant uses a wheelchair, a landlord might change a policy that they have to not designate assigned parking spaces, right? They would change that policy to allow this specific tenant, because they use a wheelchair, to, they would change the policy to allow them to have an assigned parking space. And it doesn't necessarily have to apply to the entire building or group of tenants. A lot of times we get questions like, well, if I make this accommodation, I would have to make accommodations for everyone, and that's actually not true. It is dependent on the individual with the disability, because they do have the right to make these requests. And on the other hand, a reasonable modification request, that is a change to the unit or the building, so a change to the physical structure of the property. And in those situations, the tenant actually bears the cost. There's a few exceptions to that, federally funded and public housing. But in those situations, the tenant does usually bear the cost. So, some examples of that might be installing a wheelchair ramp, or installing grab bars in the bathroom, lowering countertops, or removing carpet is another one that we see quite often. Those are all modification requests that would fall on the tenants, that the tenant would be required to pay for. And also in many cases, when the tenants is planning on vacating the unit, the landlord can also request that the tenant pay for the reversal as well, to a reasonable extent. And one more thing I wanted to mention too is that this is only really, in terms of who pays, is really most relevant to individual units. If it's for general use, like say installing a wheelchair ramp to be able to access the entire building or the entrance to the building, that would come out of the landlord's pocket, not the tenant's. So I believe that's all of my, so that's all of my, that's my very brief overview of fair housing. I know that I just kind of mentioned a lot of different things, so if you would like any more information about anything I mentioned, I do have a lot of pamphlets over there, and you can find more information on our website. I also listed some resources for Ventura County specifically, and I also have some printouts of those also. If you would go to the next slide as well. Thank you. This is our contact info. That's our housing rights hotline, our email, and our website. I'm also, that information is all over there, as I've mentioned. Please get in touch. Thank you so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
So our next presenter this evening is going to be Ricardo Arosamina with VCC DC.
Hello everyone. My name is Gabriela Munoz. I am also a part of VCC DC. I'm the homeownership specialist there. I'll be partnering with Ricardo on today's presentation. We can go to the first slide there. So our agency's mission is to assist low to moderate income clients with a goal of obtaining homeownership and also empowering individuals through education. Our agency was founded in, go to the next slide. Say it. Got it. Keep it right here. Our agency was founded in 2001 in partnership with Rodney Fernandez and Berta Garcia, again with the goal of homeownership. They had been involved a lot in the rental industry and affordable rentals, but didn't see that there was any assistance for homeownership. And so in that partnership, they created VCCDC. So just to give you an overview of the clients that we've serviced, 75% of our clients have been low income specifically, and what that means is that the area median income has a limit according to the county that we're in, and so low income is considered 80% of that. 75% of our clients fell under that. 17% were moderate income households, with 75% of these households being minority households, and 22% being single mothers as head of household. Next slide. We are a HUD-approved counseling agency, and what HUD stands for is the Housing and Urban Development of the United States. By having that designation, our homebuyer education class, which I'll talk about in a second, is certified by them. So if you are trying to purchase a home with any kind of assistance or specific loans, you may require to connect with the HUD agency to take that class. We are also, just to name another one here on the list, a CDFI, a Certified Community Development Financial Institution. And Ricardo will talk a bit more about that, but that allows us to actually bring funds into the counties that we service to provide them as assistances, down payment and closing cost assistance. So one of the pillars that I like to call it, our education pillar, one of the big ones that I just mentioned was the home buyer education class. So this is a great first step if you're trying to purchase a home and not sure about the process itself. We'll go through that whole process from beginning to end, from starting off and going over your credit, your budget, how to save, how to create action steps, to talking about loan options and assistance options and what a real estate agent is there to assist you to do. We also talk about the escrow process, what actually is a legal process to purchasing this home, and we talk about some assistances after you become a homeowner. We also offer post-purchase education, which is a single topic. Topics vary every month. This upcoming month in December, we have a class on wills and trusts in Spanish. What is a will? What is a trust? What's the difference? Who needs them? We also offer coaching services. So that's where I fall in. So I assist with families and individuals in improving their financial situation so that they can purchase. It could be that they have some credit items to work through, and I can help you with actually fixing credit, if there's anything wrong with it, or simply verifying what your credit looks like. We also offer services for homeowners. So if you're a homeowner facing financial difficulties, there are some assistance currently with the state of California, but we also look at alternatives through your bank itself. And then our lending services, which Ricardo will talk a bit more about. We offer first mortgage loans and the down payment assistance programs. Next slide. So as far as our agency's impact, we've been able to assist over 2,900 families with purchasing their homes, as well as becoming mortgage ready or preserving their home if they were already homeowners with difficulties. We've been able to finance $199.2 million in first and second mortgages, again, helping families obtain that goal of homeownership, while also helping those that are currently homeowners in our different counties that we service with over $100 million in assistances. We've been able to, in our education and counseling services, assist over 20,000 families, and again, by providing those down payment assistances, obtaining that purchase. Next slide. So I'm going to pass it over here to Ricardo.
Hello, good afternoon or good evening. Gosh, it got dark quickly these days. So, we're in the business of helping families attain home ownership. And of course, the first part of that puzzle is obviously the lending side of it. And so when I have a consultation with clients, and I probably do 5 or 6 of these a day, It's a 30-minute consultation that we'll talk about. You can just go online and you can register to talk to me or talk to Alex Vega, who's a head of lending, and we'll talk to you about the mortgage part of it and, of course, the down payment assistance. Down payment assistance is available out there. You have to be a first-time home buyer, and you have to meet the eligibility requirements in terms of the county you're living in, household size, all of that. But first and foremost, you have to be able to qualify for a home loan. Sorry, I'm not get close to the. You have to be able to get financing. So that's going to be the most important thing just to start off. So when you talk to me, I'll ask a lot of questions regarding that. Next slide. So the right part of that side had everything down, you know, it numbered everything. But let me start off with one of our prime funds that we've got is our Cal Home Deferred Loan. This year and probably the last year also, it was $40,000. This is a deferred loan, meaning that it goes for the term of your first mortgage, okay? Also, there's no monthly payment, but it does carry simple interest that accrues annually. It's a 3% simple interest that you're going to see added to that principal every year. The day that you pay off, sell, refinance your property, that's when you would pay that back. But along the lines, as you're living in the house, there is not going to be a monthly payment. You can use this money for down payment and closing costs. One of the requirements of this fund is that you have at least 1% of the funds out of your own pocket, 1% of the purchase price, in order to get that $40,000. The maximum debt-to-income ratios are 45%. So that means whether you are somebody that has no debt or you have debt on top of, let's say, a house payment, that's all going to be part of that 45%. So one of the things that you would learn, especially talking to our counselors, is about watching your debt, because that's going to impact what you can afford to buy. And of course, this fund is only available if you're low income. Low income is 80% of the area median income, which is established every year by the state and the county. And so we hope that this next coming year, there might be some increases in that low income, because obviously pricing, cost of homes here in Ventura County, LA County, Santa Barbara County, we work in 4 counties, they're very high. Next slide. So another fund that we have had every year for quite a few years is called the WISH grant. It's a forgivable grant. It's up to $22,000. There's no monthly payment, there's no interest. And basically the way it works is that for every dollar that you provide out of your own accounts, VCCDC is going to match it up to $4 for a maximum of $22,000. You can use this money for down payment and closing costs. Every year that you have this, every year for the next 5 years is forgiven 20%. At the end of that 5th year, you don't have to pay it back. So it's basically instant equity with monies that were given to you because you met the eligibility requirements. Obviously, in 5 years, you're not going to have to pay this back, you know, and it builds wealth in your house. Next slide. This next fund, Hope to Home program, it's another grant. It's only available in Ventura County. As I mentioned before, we work in 4 counties. We work in Santa Barbara, Ventura County, Los Angeles, and Kern County. This fund is only available in Ventura County, and it's available in any of the unincorporated areas of Ventura County. Basically outside of the cities, kind of like rural, or 5 cities. Now, it's forgiven after 5 years, but you have to live in the house for 5 years. It doesn't go down every year like the WISH grant. It's obviously eligible to low-income families, which are 80% of the area median income. And obviously, though, there's 5 cities where it doesn't matter if it's incorporated or corporated, and those are Port Hueneme, Santa Paula, Fillmore, Ojai, or Moore Park. If you happen to live in one of those cities, then you automatically, if you're eligible, you'd be eligible for that fund also. Next screen. So this is a map of Ventura County. So as you can see, the cities are all circled there. So all the gray areas are considered unincorporated areas. So you could buy in one of the cities that's not one of those 5 cities, but still be eligible for that fund if it's unincorporated. Next screen. We also work in Kern County. So Bakersfield has another fund, the same name, obviously, as a Hope to Home, but this is Bakersfield. This is not a grant. This is a deferred loan. You have to be obviously low income there, which is 80% of the AMI in Kern County. So you're going to see a screen coming up where you're going to see that the income limits are different in every county. Much, much lower, obviously, in Bakersfield. You have to be 80% of the area median income, and it's only available in the city parts of Bakersfield. Obviously, there's city parts of Bakersfield and there's county parts. So next screen will show a map of this. And so everything that's in blue is part of the city of Bakersfield. So it's very little that's county. And you know, just a quick story, when I first learned about this program a couple of years ago when it became available, I was helping a client that was buying a property in Bakersfield, and it happened to be in one of the yellow areas, you know, which is, you know, I was kind of amazed because at that time I didn't understand this program, and so we found out later that she was not eligible. So make sure that I know that this is Ventura County, but just like in the Hope to Home grant, let us know an address so we can look it up on our county map to make sure. Next screen. So these are the income limits. So this is Ventura County. Ventura County, the way it works, just like the other counties, is it's based on a household size. So household size of 1, 70,250. As long as you make under that, then you potentially are eligible for our funds, all the way up to a family of 8. So you could be a husband and wife and 3 kids, and as long as the income does not exceed 108,400, then you potentially are eligible. So this is Ventura County. Next screen. We also work in Santa Barbara County. They're the highest of all the counties. Their income limits are higher. So if you happen to be somebody that is interested in buying out there, they give you a little bit more leeway on the income limits. Los Angeles County, surprisingly, last year they were higher than Ventura County. This year they're less. So it's a decision that's made by the county and the state. So, you know, I don't understand that, but you know, that's just the way it is in LA County. And then Kern County, of course, is the lowest. So obviously you can see one person household is only $43,650, whereas in Ventura it's $70,250. So obviously out there cost of living is less, prices are also lower. Here's a fund that we created just a few years ago following the Thomas and the Woolsey fires. This is a $100,000 deferred loan. If you happen to be somebody that was financially affected by those fires, and financially affected could mean a lot of things. You might have lived in a house that burned down. You might have worked in a building that burned down, so you had to change jobs, or maybe your rent went up after the fires more than 5%. So as long as we can get documentation on that, this is a fund that's available. It's $100,000. It's going to be deferred for 30 years. 3% simple interest that accrues annually. You can use it for down payment and closing cost. And again, you have to have at least 1% of whatever the purchase price is of your own funds. So if you're buying a $400,000 property, as long as you at least are coming in with $4,000, the rest could be covered by all our funds. So that's pretty cool. It's not driven by your FICO score. Obviously, when you apply for, I'm sure some of you have applied for a home loan in the past, and maybe you might have been somebody that had credit scores that were too low, because they have their own guidelines on, and it's usually about 620 to 680 credit scores. Our funds, all of our funds, are not driven by your credit score, but you have to be able to qualify for financing. So that's something that we would discuss if you and I would have that consultation. Maximum debt ratios are 45%. This is kind of across the board. They want to make sure that you have enough money to pay everything else, gas, food, electricity. And so your debt, which is part of that 45%, plays a big part in that. Moderate income for this program goes up to 120% of the AMI. So if you were somebody that is a moderate income person that was affected by the fires, then you would also you'd be eligible for this fund. Next screen. We also work with the California Housing Finance Agency, CalHFA, if that term is familiar to you. And they provide 3 funds. Up until 3 or 4 months ago, there was only the 2 funds that they've had most of the time, which were basically 2 deferred loans that would help with minimum required down payments and also help with some closing costs. They came up with this forgivable equity builder grant, which is 10% of the purchase price. It does require you to be what is called low income. Ventura County low income limit is $92,320. It's different than our low income limits because it's a different formula that they use for that. But this is a fund that we use for a lot of clients, and we can combine them with some of our funds. So I've had individuals recently that closed where they got all of our funds, VCCDC, like $85,000, plus the equity builder grant. If they were buying a $400,000 property, that's an additional $40,000 on top of that. And what this helps is if you understand lending, if you put 20% down on a purchase, then you're not going to have what is called mortgage insurance or MI. Our funds help with that, so this is huge. And of course, we are introducing this. We talk about this every time I talk to clients. And hopefully I can fit them in all of these funds. Next slide. So City of Oxnard, they also offer down payment assistance programs. And they have a low-income program, and they have a moderate-income program. Both of them are $57,000. Now, the low-income program is a combination of a grant and deferred financing. For moderate income, which is higher income, they also have about $57,000, but it's a deferred loan. So this is a program that we assist with. We can combine with some of our funds. So there are funds available out there. For a lot of people that I talk to, when they complete our questionnaire, they show very, very little assets. So we provide a lot of that hope, a lot of the funds that people need just to get a down payment, just to be able to buy. This is just kind of an example of what happens when you are buying a property without assistance and with assistance. So in the left column or the middle column, that's just a regular FHA loan where the requirement is 3.5% of your purchase price. And so as you can see, you have a down payment of $17,500 that's required. You're left with a loan of $490. And so at the bottom, you can see your payment is going to be $4,081, which is, that's a pretty payment. For me, that's high, Now, if you were buying that same property, but you were eligible for down payment assistance, and let's say you were eligible for all three funds, so that's $85,000, which comes off of the $500,000. In the example on the right is a conventional loan. So you're left with a $415,000 loan. The taxes, the insurance are all the same, but look at the payment at the bottom. Big, huge difference in payments, $3,443. And of course, because you're putting in a much larger down payment, the percentage on the mortgage insurance is much lower. So it really helps clients to be able to then qualify for, have a smaller payment, save on their budget, or maybe potentially buy a bigger home. Next slide. Oh, so as you can see, look at the difference in the two payments. You're saving about $638 a month, which is in 5 years, a savings of about $38,000 plus. So that's huge, being able to utilize funds that our organization provides, and we partner with Cal HAFA. Next screen. So this is just our team. As you can see, Bertha, who was one of the co-founders of us, and then there's the middle is the counseling team. At the bottom is our team, and Alex Vega, who's our boss on the lending side, Kaylee, development, and Sylvia, who's our director of fund development. And I think that's it. No, I'm sorry. Last screen. So if you are interested in having a conversation with me or Alex, who's our lending head of lending, you can just go to the www.org.app and you can set up a 30-minute consultation. We're not going to pull your credit. We're just going to talk to you. We're going to ask you questions, see where you're at. And then, of course, if you want to attend one of our free workshops, just go to the bottom website and you can attend our 5-hour class. And I think there's one tomorrow, but it's going to be during the day. So I think you'd be too late, but there's one coming up this month also. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that information, Ricardo, on the pathways to home ownership. So our next presenter is going to be Helen Iloyan with WINS and WCDC.
Okay. I'm going to jump up here, if that's okay, because I like to point at things. Perfect. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for everyone for coming here tonight to learn more about resources and what your community has to offer and rights and all things housing. So we heard a lot about just the existing resources for housing, and I'm going to take it a little more conceptual now. So we're going to learn mostly the vision for the WINS program. So my name is Helen Iloyan. I'm with the Westside Community Development Corporation. The WINS program is the Westside Innovative Housing Solutions, lots of acronyms. And I'm going to give you a brief overview right now of the presentation. So we'll look at some numbers, but I'll make it quick because I know there was a lot of numbers that were shared today. And then we're going to look at a case study from a nonprofit in LA. It's called LA Moss, but they orchestrated a backyard homes program, which is essentially a one-stop shop. So go ahead and next slide. So as you can see here, we have a lot of numbers, some figures here, but to really drive home the point that housing makes up the bulk cost for a lot of our residents, we can see here on the county side, we have estimated $24,672 for a single adult living in the county. I suspect that estimate may be a little too low. If you are paying $1,000 or $2,000 in rent, you're going to hit that 24 pretty quickly. So you see here on this line item, housing for one adult is 50%. With two, it is 38. And then when you have a family, they expect that to drop down to 29. And the sweet spot is usually around 30%. Hence the paycheck stub requirement when you're applying for housing. And then we see that a little more figures just showing housing taking up the biggest chunk of the money bag that for us in the county. So go ahead, next slide. So the city of Ventura, more numbers. So this is broken down by household types. You'll see here the 2010 and 2019 numbers. I believe this was taken straight from the housing element. Households, families with children, without children, we see that making up the biggest bulk, 64%. We also see other families, so that would be more so the single parent households, making up another 17%. And then non-families, so people who are either living alone or living with someone that's not a family member, and that is a sizable portion at roughly 35%. So we need to kind of keep the composition of households in mind as we plan for housing that's affordable for the folks from different walks of life and living arrangements. And then on the your right-hand side, you'll see a figure showing Ventura in comparison with the county median income. So it looks about $90K for the county median, and we are just at $80,000, so we're falling short of that. So that's also important to keep in mind as we craft our housing policies. Next slide. Some more information. I like this chart a lot because it really kind of demonstrates, if you look on the renter side, the extremely low and very low, the numbers are elevated when you compare it to the owners. So we're really seeing there's more of a shift towards the lower levels of income as opposed to the owners who have a moderate and above moderate higher levels. So good to keep in mind when inclusionary housing ordinances come up and when we're looking at rent prices. And then over on the other side of that chart, we have some information on the regional housing needs and the targets that Ventura needs to hit as a city. Go ahead. So the backyards housing project, this is essentially a one-stop shop ADU program. So the nonprofit LA Moss was serving as a project management kind of field. They would offer affordable design and construction support. So when you think about building an ADU, and ADU is an additional dwelling unit, usually referred to as a granny flat. It's just a smaller unit, usually in your backyard or over your garage, and it's just secondary living space. A lot of people have been, who are empty nesters, usually like to move into that unit and then rent out the single family home on their property to new families usually. So the LA Moss nonprofit had a wide range of strategic partners to pull this off, because not only were they project managing, but they were also providing the construction design support. There was financing support from lenders to help refinance some of those units to make it pencil with the construction costs. There was also landlord training and tenant supportive services to kind of help shepherd these new landlords into the process and inform the tenants of their rights. Also, there was a signing bonus offered for new Section 8 landlords as well. So self-help, credit unions, housing authority, the Human Rights Center actually was partners on this project, and the pilot had about 100 residents sign up. I think at the end of the day, the property owners end up breaking even. So they didn't pay any increase in their mortgage, but they were able to offer a unit to someone who wouldn't be able to afford one otherwise. And I did a lot of research on this, and if this were coupled with grant writing efforts, the landlords would actually be able to turn a profit. And I think with some of the changes and modifications that we're thinking about at WCDC, we can make this an even more enticing deal. So go ahead and advance. So just neighborhood opportunities for our community. This provides a ladder opportunity or a stepping stone to home ownership. So if for families that are new, that maybe don't want to live in an apartment, this would be a fantastic solution. People who necessarily feel that they're not getting the best bang for their buck in terms of traditional apartments, this is a great option. People who want someone close by in case something happens, another option. ADUs can also help meet our regional needs. I know I talked to the general plan team, we're not necessarily counting the ADUs as part of our housing stock for the RENA numbers because although permits are being issued, not a lot's being developed. And that's because construction is a scary process and an expensive process. And I don't know if you guys have gone through the permit process. I do it every day because I'm a land use planner, but it is daunting. And if you don't have a lot of moxie, you'll probably get discouraged. And that's generally true for most jurisdictions. But it's really valuable having a project management entity like WCDC on board to help shepherd you through that program so you don't feel the need or feel discouraged. So then, as I mentioned, grant opportunities can kind of help cut the cost of development, and we'll talk about one later in the presentation as well. Next slide. So I hope you guys can see this, but this is just kind of an example of the traditional wood frame construction that the nonprofit LA Moss put together. So this is a studio apartment, 374 square feet, it looks like, a garage conversion, micro units, L shape. So this is essentially a catalog. So if a property owner were to pull this up, take a look and say, I like that L shape, that works for my lot. So we would run that design through the building and safety process and get that permitted. The revision that I'm proposing is that we design this catalog, coordinate with our building and safety staff, and get everything pre-approved and ready to go. So this would be like standardized plans with traditional construction methods. And this, I have still getting my arms around the cost, but I anticipate this will be more expensive than the option that I'm gonna present next, but still design costs and permit costs will be reduced, which will overall lessen the cost of the development. So go ahead, next slide. Okay, so this is actually an example of the ADUs and the farm worker dwelling units that are already offered by our county. So these plans have been approved, they're standardized. You do still have to pull a permit, so if anyone downloads them and has property in the county, you still have to get a permit. However, they're essentially ready to go. And I know our city has expressed interest in using some of these plans. I think they're in the process. I'm looking at our city staff. I'm not sure if they're nodding or not, but having something like this is very valuable, especially if you can't afford to hire an architect and you just want the unit in your backyard. And these plans, if they pique your interest, feel free to use them. I don't know if our city staff have worked out a memorandum of understanding, but I've heard it's underway. So go ahead, next slide. This is an example of another option for construction, so prefabricated units. So basically units that are not traditionally built on the site. You would basically look through a catalog like this, pick out a floor plan that you like best, and then what you would need to submit to building safety would be information on the foundation, anchoring, that kind of stuff. But the overall unit, you'll have the floor plan and the specifications and instructions for installation that the laborers will use. But the design work has been pretty much done and the fabrication has been pretty much done. So this will, I suspect, cut costs even further. Next slide. So citywide benefits. Everybody likes to talk about affordable housing in a silo. I like to put a little perspective on it. So affordable housing really impacts multiple things in our city, one being economic development. I'm a firm believer that housing and jobs must go together and they have a very strong relationship. So if we have more affordable housing options for young professionals, more high-paying sectors will be likely to cite themselves in our city. If we don't have housing stock to even house any workers, they're gonna start driving in from other cities, which is not as good for the environment and also not as good for our city because we're missing out on some of the additional income from the renters, and we're gonna miss out on this increased property values and the high sector jobs. And you know, I work, like I said, in the development realm, and a lot of the time I have business owners calling me saying, Ventura is such a beautiful place. I'd love to establish my business there, but I'm worried that the workers will not find a place to live because it's too expensive. And that's a very real problem, and I know all the, the chamber is concerned about it. I'm sure other economic development groups are as well, but it really impacts a multitude of disciplines, not just housing alone. Go ahead. So the other incentive grant program for ADUs from the state, you could get up to $40,000 for pre-development, non-recurring costs. So there's a QR code to actually look at the webpage here and a link. But it could be site prep, the drawings, geotechnical, basically making sure that you can actually develop on your property, surveying, et cetera, just the various costs that come up with development. So you could get up to $40,000, and that's a resource that's available now if you're interested in developing. Mm-hmm. So next steps for the WINS program. After hearing everybody's presentation, I will come and probably give you my business card because I really think that there's a lot of strategic partners in this room, but we need to identify more. So the more people we can get to support the design process, the project management, the landlord training, tenants, support, lending, the more the merrier, quite frankly. So we need partners, and we need to coordinate with the city on the pre-approved drawings. So we need to make sure whether it's the conventional construction method or the prefabrication, we need to outline that process for streamlining these affordable units. And we need to make sure that when we do submit a project application or an inquiry that the city is ready, they understand the process, and we can get it through the permit path very quickly. And then last thing we need to do is identify eligible properties. So I'm thinking 100 would be a really great project to start out. That's actually the number that the LA Moss nonprofit used. And it's, depending on your zoning, lot size, building coverage, geotech, what kind of fire zone you're in, you might not be able to develop an additional dwelling unit. But I mean, these are all questions that we can answer and that I can help you answer. So don't feel discouraged if you think that maybe your lot's too small, maybe there's a design option above a garage that would work for you. I would just ask that when you send me an inquiry about a property, let me know where you live so I can look it up. That's all I ask. And go ahead, next slide. Okay, so moving on to another project that we're working on, very near and dear to my heart. It is the Avenue Trade School. Can anyone in the audience tell me where this property is? It's kind of in the name. Go ahead, Liz. Mm-hmm. Yes, so it's the old Avenue School. You've probably driven by it. There's not much happening there, but we have a vision. Cue next slide. Okay, so this is a rendering. This is all very conceptual, I should say. So it's not actually in progress, but this is an idea of what it could look like. So the existing school is right here, trade school. They would have incubator workspaces above it, dog park, work yard, all things to help enhance our workforce for the future. And then on the other side, we have a housing component, because like I said earlier, I believe jobs and housing need to run together. So we have trade school housing for the students, and then we also have workforce housing on the other side of the parcel. This property is fairly large, so there's a lot of flexibility with the design, but I think it's important to note that as we continue developing these projects, we keep in mind all the connections that housing has and all the places we can put it. I know it'd be nice to have housing everywhere, and I know the supply and demand will lessen the cost eventually, but we do need to make sure that people are getting high-paid jobs in the city so that we can have return benefits to the city. So this is one of the projects that we're working on as part of the WINS program, and I'm hoping that we can break this out into phases. So maybe the housing component can move forward quicker, because I think the trade school will take a little bit longer, but thinking about housing in every project that we come across. Go ahead. Those are my references.
Okay, so I'd like to thank Helen for her presentation as well. Now we're going to do the question and answer segment. So if you have any questions for any of our presenters tonight, please raise your hand and we will run you a microphone. This is your time to shine. Yes, on my way.
A question about the state $40,000 ADU. Does that have to be, can that be part of a house? Like building a separate unit that is attached to the house, or does it have to be, 20 feet away or something?
That sounds like a junior ADU. I'd have to check what the restrictions are, but I have a feeling if it says ADU on the name, I can double check on that.
All right, I'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, this is a question for the fair housing person. There you are. Under the state fair housing law, isn't legal status also a protected class?
Yeah, thank you. So, whoa, that's loud. Yes, so there was an assembly bill adopted in 2017 sorry, you asked about immigration status, right? Yeah, so that does protect tenants from being discriminated against based on citizenship status or immigration status. And so first of all, it makes it illegal to threaten anyone or evict someone based on status, or discriminate against them in any sort of way. And so it provides that, but it also is really interesting law because it provides an affirmative defense in court as well. So it gives the tenant, if they do experience that discrimination, it gives them, they then have the right to sue their landlord in court for damages, and it also provides them with a defense for their eviction as well. So yeah, it does provides both protection based on status as well as an affirmative defense in court.
Any other questions?
So are any of these programs relevant specifically for seniors, those of us that are inching along in our lives? Thank you.
Do you want to talk about some that you're going to talk about that?
What?
You'll address that at your...
We'll talk about this in the upcoming panel.
Hi. My question is for the fair housing. In 2020, when they passed AB 1482, $25 million was given for legal aid for tenants. Are you able to catch any of that money in for, that was brought up that there's no legal help? I just wanted to make sure that people know that there's $25 million that the state provides annually. Are you able to capture any of that for Ventura residents?
That's for eviction defense, right? So I'm not personally aware of how that money is allocated, specifically in Ventura County. I know that LA County has Stay Housed LA, which is their citywide eviction defense program. But I do know that the court's legal self-help desk here in Ventura County at the courthouse is probably, well, I've heard it's just an extremely a great resource, and it's probably the most accessible, I would say, currently. But it is, right now I have heard, unless this has changed, somebody might know, but it was by appointment only up until recently, since COVID, I believe. But I do have some other legal aid services that are listed here in this pamphlet, and that actually comes from the city of Ventura. So there are some eviction defense resources here as well.
One thing that I would like to add about the $25 million allocation is that a significant number of that funding actually went to jurisdictions that wanted to establish right to counsel protections for tenants. So like as Madeline mentioned, like Stay Housed LA for LA County. Another big part of the money actually went to all the self-help centers at the local courthouses, so they can provide assistance with answers. They can, provide some representation depending on the facts of the case. So that money has been distributed. Most of it has been utilized. So we're kind of hoping that the governor will pass additional funding down so that we can work with the county of Ventura to see if we can establish a right to counsel as well. Any other questions? Yes.
Okay, so I've been trying to get an ADU built on my property. It was denied because it was in a high fire zone, but I've been able to go about getting a dwelling unit in the same site. So what I'm confused as, what's the difference between people living in an ADU, which I'm trying to provide a safe, clean place for someone to live, and a dwelling unit where people are going to live in a safe, clean dwelling unit? What's the difference? How can they deny one mode of dwelling based on terminology and not another dwelling unit based on terminology? I'm confused as to what the problem is. I have been trying this for almost 3 years. It is driving me crazy, okay? A safe, clean place for people to live. And you cannot tell me that people with 2 or 3 kids, which is basically the average in most of this area, can live in a junior dwelling unit. You cannot live comfortably in 300 square feet. Children have to have their own bedrooms, preferably at least 1.5 bathrooms. Children need a place to call their own. You cannot tell me that people can live comfortably, even one person, in 300 square feet. So what do you see that my options are going to be to try to get these accessory dwelling units built on my property, which is at least over an acre?
Excuse me, so we have someone who's going to address that, I think, right?
Yeah, if you don't mind, we can chat after and talk specifically about your site so I can understand a little more about what's going on there. So I'm happy to stay after and talk to you about your specific situation and see what we can do. Okay? Who are you? My name's Netta. I'm with the city of Ventura. Excuse me? My name is Netta. I'm with the city of Ventura. Yeah.
Oh, I've been dealing with the city of Ventura for at least 3 years.
Okay.
I'm not a pleased resident.
You're halfway there.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments? Okay. So now we're going to go ahead and proceed with our panel discussion. And that's going to be about affordable housing developments throughout the city. So we're going to have Karen Flock, Sandy Sanchez from the Housing Authority of the City of Ventura. And we're also going to have Veronica Garcia with People Self-Help Housing.
Okay, good evening, everybody. We'll first introduce our panel. I'm Karen Flock. I'm with the Housing Authority of the City of San Buenaventura. Now? What? Okay, and I'm the Deputy Director for Real Estate Development, and passing it off to Sandy.
Hi, everyone. Sandy Sanchez. I'm a senior developer with the Housing Authority.
Hi, good evening. Veronica Garcia, Chief Real Estate Development Officer with People Self-Help Housing. We're a nonprofit affordable housing developer on the Central Coast.
Okay, so with this first slide, we just wanted to provide some background on the unit breakdown of the Housing Authority. So as you can see by this chart, we have about 221 remaining public housing units. So we initially, the Housing Authority was founded in 1949. Bless you. And we had, just a few years ago, we had about 700 public housing units that we have since converted to affordable tax credit units through HUD's rental assistance demonstration project. So as far as our affordable low-income housing tax credit stock, we're at about 854 units. And we have about 27 other non-tax credit apartments, and our Section 8 department manages about 1,500 housing choice vouchers throughout the city. Okay, and these are some of our projects here on the west side. So upper left, you'll see Willett Ranch, which is a 50-unit senior developer for households earning up to 30% of the area median income. And this development is actually right across the road from the trade school project that we just heard about in another presentation. That project was completed in 2021. And some of the notable features of this project are that it is Greenpoint rated, so it was designed and built to certain sustainability requirements and benchmarks. And then lower left, we have Westview Village Phase 1, which is a conversion that I was speaking to with our rental assistance demonstration program. And through this phase, we demolished 72 public housing units that were built in the early 50s and replaced them with 131 multifamily apartments, 1 through 4 bedrooms. And actually, Veronica Garcia, in her previous role here at the Housing Authority, was instrumental in getting that project built. So very exciting. Then we have Westview Village Phase 2, which is currently under construction. 50 units for seniors earning up to 60% of the area median income. And Westview Phase 3, that's 105 multifamily units for households earning up to 60% of AMI. And I'll pass it on to Karen to talk about El Portal.
Okay, and just a couple of other features about Westview Village. So it just in total, it will replace 180 units of public housing with 320 new homes and apartments. And it has some major green features. Phase 1 is 50% net zero, so it's an all-electric project, and it produces 50% of its energy. Phase 3, which is almost completed, will produce 100% of its energy, and it's also all-electric, so this is kind of the wave of the future. We're seeing this a lot. Phase 2 is almost all electric and doesn't have quite enough roof space to be 100% net zero, but I think it's about 50% net zero. And we're also doing things like gray water usage and stormwater recapture and infiltration, so that helps with our water situation. And we have some electric vehicle charging stations and a couple of other cool green features. So El Portal is one of our favorite projects, also just up the avenue at 1254 North Ventura Avenue. This is the project that we acquired a couple of years ago. It was a project with a lot of code violations. I think people probably remember a lot of bad activity going on there. We were able to completely reconfigure and rehabilitate it into, so I think now it's kind of a model for the avenue. It has 29 affordable apartments for mostly for special needs households. And also we kept 3 commercial spaces. And in one of those spaces, the STEM Ambassadors program, which is kind of an entrepreneurship program for youth, is running. It's a pretty cool program. So we're just really proud of that program. I'll pass back to Sandy.
So we wanted just to share some of the investment that the City of Ventura has made with some of our recent projects here on the west side. So I won't read off every one of them, but you can see the contribution per project here.
And I'll just make a comment. To build affordable housing, it's expensive, just like it's expensive to build pretty much any housing. And to make it affordable takes putting together a lot of different funding sources. So this funding from the city has been really key, as well as layering it with state funding and low-income housing tax credit equity and a whole, they call it the lasagna of affordable housing finance.
Okay, so what is affordable housing? So I know we've tossed around the acronym AMI quite a bit in all the presentations, but here we just wanted to give everyone a glimpse of what the average incomes are by AMI. So if a family or a household is low income, meaning they're earning 80% of AMI, you can see what their annual household income would be if they're a one-person household, if they're just the average 4-person household. And we also break down what the affordable rents would be by AMI. So if we look down at the 30% AMI, which a lot of folks are at, we're seeing what the affordable rents are, and that obviously is not in line with the rents that we're seeing in the city, unfortunately.
Sort of theoretical question, do we need more affordable housing? Of course we do, and there's some just statistics, and I think these are all taken from the cause study, but almost half of Venturans are renters, and almost half of Venturans are low income, and renters are primarily young people, minorities, and low-income folks. So we find that renters are often cost burdened. They're paying more than 30% of their income as rent, and the lower your income is, the more likely you are to be cost burdened.
Okay, and we took these numbers from the National Low Income Housing Coalition's Out of Reach study. So I included a link there. It's pretty interesting if you guys want to take a look at that at your own time. So we took the Ventura County information, and as you can see here, we have the minimum wage worker would make about $780 a month. And then if you look down at the orange bars, we have the approximate one-bedroom fair market rate at nearly $1,800 per month, and about $2,200 for a two-bedroom fair market rent. And then just a note there that we have seen that rents have gone up 25% for a two-bedroom apartment in the last 5 years. And this was an interesting article that was published in NPR, I believe, in July. Some of you might have seen it, where the county of Ventura was actually ranked #1 in metropolitan areas with the most severe housing shortage in the nation, so with about 31,000 units short. So that is also linked there for reference. So we wanted to include some resources for how to apply for housing. So our offices are still closed to the public. But you can visit us by appointment. So we have 2 offices, one here on the west side on Riverside Street, and we have our Section 8 office on the east end on Snapdragon Street. And you can also apply for housing online by visiting our website or scanning the QR code, which will take you directly to our wait list, where you can create a profile and get on any wait lists.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of people on our wait list, so most of them are closed, but there are a couple of wait lists that are open now, so might as well get on now while you can.
Yes, so thank you, Karen and Sandy, for that amazing presentation. And now we have Veronica with People Self-Help Housing.
Hi again. I feel like I have the hardest job because I'm the last thing before dinner or Netflix, so I'll try to make this short and sweet. So I oversee real estate development activities, housing development, affordable housing development activities for my organization. Again, we're a nonprofit. So just as a little bit more about who we are, if you haven't already heard about People's Self-Help Housing, our mission is up there in the upper left corner. So our mission is to build affordable homes with site-based services that offer opportunities to change lives and strengthen communities on the Central Coast of California. So we're here, I'm in Oxnard, but we work up and down the Central Coast, all the way up to Monterey County. Monterey County, San Luis Obispo County, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County. We were founded in 1970, so we're a little over 52 years old. We have offices up and down the Central Coast. We own and develop housing. We're the property manager for our housing. We hold on to our properties long term, and we also provide services on site and run education programs for youth. We've built over 1,800 affordable apartments, and we also have built affordable single-family homes. So we have a homeownership program, and we also have a multifamily rental program. On affordable homeownership, so we're one of the few organizations that still runs affordable homeownership development activities, and we've built affordable single-family developments, mostly in rural cities, rural communities on the Central Coast. You can see a map with various locations. We're still actively developing affordable homeownership, mostly up, farther up north. We're hoping to do more of that in Ventura County. We currently have 6 future homeownership projects planned. And then, of course, we also are actively developing affordable rental multifamily housing. We've built 54 affordable communities in 3 counties, Santa Barbara County, Ventura County, and San Luis Obispo County. Currently, as far as existing affordable properties that we own and manage here in Ventura, Peoples owns and manages a property here just within a half a mile, El Patio. That's a single room occupancy development, affordable housing development with 42 homes, just right off downtown Ventura. And we also own and operate 4 affordable communities in Carpinteria, which isn't too far from here. And I brought a list of our properties, so if you wanted to know where are our properties, you can look here if you wanted to find out how to apply. And then affordable housing coming soon. So this is just a snapshot of our current development activity in Ventura County. So we currently have a 69-unit apartment complex, 100% affordable apartment complex in Santa Paula. That's our People's Place project, and that's in construction. That will be finished at the end of next year. And we also will be starting construction on a affordable housing community in Oxnard. That's our Cypress Place community. Both of those projects include units specifically designated for farm worker households, but we also have units just open to family and individuals. In planning stages, we have 3 projects. So we have 2 affordable communities, one in Fillmore, that's 50 apartments in Fillmore. And then we actually have a project that we're really excited about here in the city of Ventura, which I'll share a little bit more about, approximately 57 apartments just across the street from Ventura College. And then recently, we were selected to be the developer of an affordable homeownership project in the city of Thousand Oaks. So really excited about that. And our goal, our mission is to increase supply of affordable housing. This is just a snapshot of our planned development in the city of Ventura. As I mentioned, we are partnering with a church, with the College Methodist Church, who owns property just across the street from Ventura College. And the church decided that they wanted to make the property available to develop affordable housing. Affordable housing as well as Head Start childcare services on site. So People's Self-Help, my organization, will be the developer of the affordable housing. We're working really closely with the church and partnering with the city of Ventura to plan the project. So this is just a conceptual site plan, and we're planning approximately 57 affordable homes. That means affordable to households earning around 60% of area median income, as Sandy and Karen just explained, 60% area median income and below. So the project would include 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom units. It's designed to be a family-friendly community with on-site services, property management, a full-time on-site property manager, and a community building, playground for the kids who live there, and as I mentioned, a Head Start childcare facility on site. And so for additional information, we list all of our properties, both existing and planned, on our website. If you're interested at all in becoming a resident of a People's Self-Help Housing property, you can apply, you can actually submit an application online. And then I also have a list of all of our rental housing sites and some information about how to apply. So feel free to pick up information, or if you have additional questions, please feel free to come up to me and I'll give you my contact information so you can get in touch. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Veronica. So we wanted to know whether or not anyone had any questions or comments about this presentation.
Buenas noches. Hace 4 años llegué aquí, hace 5 años llegué aquí a Estados Unidos con mis 2 hijas y mi
I came to
esposo.
the United States 4 years ago with my 2 children.
Y tengo una niña especial con síndrome de Down y la otra niña es de 10 años.
I have a 10-year-old and another child with Down syndrome.
En aquel momento me acerqué a donde estás tú aquí, a Housing.
Back then I went to see you
Me
at the
anoté.
housing office.
Y no sé de dónde fue la llamada, si fue de allí o
I
si
wrote
fue de
my
Housing, que está un poco más hacia Oxnard, creo.
I don't know if it was for housing
Y
here
me-
or towards Oxnard.
Y recibí una llamada que sí podía optar para irme a una casa de
I
estas, ¿verdad?
received a phone call that said that I qualified to get a house.
Pero la persona que me atendió por teléfono, en ese momento me sentí como si me hubiesen dado un golpe porque
The person who talked to me made me feel like somebody struck me.
la persona que me llamó me dice, señora, estamos llamándola para que pueda entrar a una de estas casas. Yo le comenté que yo era asilada política.
The person that called me said, you qualify for a house,
Que
and I
lo-
told the person that I was under political asylum here.
Que lo tenía aprobado, pero
That
no
I
era
had been
residente.
approved,
Pero no era residente de los Estados Unidos.
but I was not a U.S. resident.
Entonces la persona me dijo, lo siento, usted no opta por esa
The
opción.
person said, sorry, that's not an option for you.
Entonces me quedé esperando y ahora soy residente de los Estados
So I
Unidos.
waited. Now I am a resident of the United States.
Espero que dentro de poco ser ciudadana,
pero eso
Soon I may be a citizen,
se me bajaron todos los ánimos de buscar casa y
But-
esas cosas. Ahora estoy en eso.
I really lost all my hopes of looking for a home, so I'm in that again.
Entonces quería saber qué oportunidades se puede siendo residente o tienes que ser.
So what's the opportunity? Is it available for residents or what?
So it's kind of complicated. Many units, like probably housing that doesn't have Section 8 subsidy is completely open to people no matter what their legal status. And Veronica probably has more apartments like that. Most of the apartments that the Housing Authority has have project-based Section 8, and that has more restrictions. If you don't have legal status, you can't get Section 8. So, but if you're a mixed family, for example, children have legal status, parents don't, you can get partial Section 8. So, and I'd be happy to talk to you about your case afterwards, but it is a little complicated. Do you have anything to add to that?
Solo que, perdón, que la trataron así. No sé quién la llamó. Sorry. But usted puede accesar, hay housing asequible. Y algunos proyectos son financiados con dinero federal. Y ahí es donde depende del programa. Pero la mayoría, nosotros, mi organización, tenemos proyectos financiados con dinero federal, pero también sin los programas que tienen esos requerimientos. So, depende, hay que preguntar. Y si alguien le da información así, hay que hacer más preguntas y decir, ¿quién es su supervisora? Quiero hablar con supervisor para asegurarme de la información que me está dando. So just to translate in English, some affordable housing is financed. We use just traditional bank loans in combination with various forms of government funding. So some of our funding that we use has certain requirements regarding legal status. Some federal programs have that, but that doesn't mean that all housing is inaccessible to you, depending on your citizenship status. Most of our affordable housing projects that are financed with the tax credit program are open, and that legal status should not be a barrier. It shouldn't be a barrier. So my message is that if you ever are trying to access housing and someone says, sorry, that's not for you, that's not good enough. So you have to ask more questions, understand why, and are there other options? So the question is, how can I access housing? How can I access affordable housing? What options are there for me? So, you need to be an advocate for yourself, and then, our organizations like us, we strive to be a community resource. So we should be a trusted partner, and if you're not getting that kind of customer service, then I would want to know about that to make sure that we are doing our job in the community.
And also, so that's kind of the view for affordable housing, but in the market, as we mentioned earlier, under state law, legal status is a protected class. Sometimes the federal law trumps it, but that might be something you could talk to the other group.
The Housing Rights Center.
The Housing Rights Center.
Do we have any other questions or comments? Yes.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. Okay. Hey everyone, how's it going? Veronica, I do have a question for you regarding the people self-help housing available homes. I was wondering, like, I can't believe I haven't asked you this before, but what does the application process look like, and how long does it take for you to actually, know if you've received an affordable home?
So I actually have a handout that explains the application process, but you can apply online. So we are our own property manager. So you can submit a paper application if you're more comfortable with that. But we recommend applying online. We have an app through our website that makes it pretty easy. And we have, so kind of like the Housing Authority has a public housing waiting list and a Section 8 waiting list. But most affordable housing has we have separate waiting lists for each property. So that's why I brought this list of all of our sites so that you can look at that and see, okay, I'm interested in this property in Carpinteria. So you'd have to apply to that specific property, submit an application, get on the waiting list for that property. And each property's waiting list varies. So some properties have really long waiting lists. Other properties, like, even the Housing Authority has some properties that have really short waiting lists where you might get a call much faster. So that's why I just encourage apply, for family. If you have family members who need housing, I have family members that I've been trying to encourage to apply for housing. I'm like, just get on the list. It is an amazing resource because there's just no other way to get that kind of rent. Those rent access affordable rents. So on length of time, I can't really tell you because it varies depending on the site, but you can get in touch with our property management teams. I'll follow up with you about that.
I also wanted to just add to that, the city of Ventura has an inclusionary housing program, which means that certain market rate projects have to develop some units that are income restricted. And that program is actually managed with the city contracts with the Housing Authority to manage that program or administer it. So if you go to their website, which they can give you the information, there is a city programs tab on that website, and it does show what rentals and for sale units are available and what the income restrictions are, and you can calculate what level of income you are in order to determine your eligibility, but that's also a resource.
Any other questions, comments?
Okay, I'm on a roll. Who are you?
Okay, me?
Yeah.
I'm Veronica.
No, all of you. What group is
Yeah,
this?
okay, I'm Veronica Garcia. I'm with a nonprofit called People's Self-Help Housing. And then Sandy and Karen are with the Housing Authority of the City of Ventura.
Okay, now where does this funding come from for all these projects?
It depends. So each project is financed a little bit differently, but for my organization and for actually a lot of the Housing Authority projects, the primary tool to finance affordable housing is the tax credit program.
Oh, so I'm paying for this.
Actually, the tax credit program is structured to be basically a tax incentive for banks and investors. So those are private institutions. They are purchasing the tax credit, and that's what's generating private equity that we use in combination with a broad range of other federal programs that are designed to fund affordable housing.
Okay, so I'm confused as to.
Let me just add on to that a bit. So unfortunately, by far the largest housing subsidy in the United States is the mortgage interest tax deduction. That's worth a whole lot more than funding that goes to affordable housing. And that's also a piece of, what is part of our overall support for housing.
Some of these projects are completed and some of them are not completed. I'm kind of up in like, can I go look at this stuff? Can I see what you're actually doing?
Yes, you can.
Can we also get an accounting of how the money is spent? where your incomes are coming from?
You can look up our financial reports. We get audited. And if we wanted to go back to the list of Housing Authority projects, El Portal, it's 1254 North Ventura Avenue, right on the avenue, you can see it. Willett Ranch, 54 and 55 Willett Street, right up a little bit further north on the avenue, right across the street from the Avenue School. The Westview, Riverside, Flint, Barnett, all those streets, you can come by and see it.
Why is this, like, I didn't even know about this meeting until somebody I happened to talk to said, oh, this meeting is going on. Why is this stuff, unless you're in the little in-group of people that are online, which most of us aren't?
So for this event, we have done a significant number of outreach. We had all of our partnering organizations. They all received flyers, media press. We had advertisement all over our website, all over our social media accounts. We also made sure that we had a display at the Auto Center off the 101 freeway. So we've been advertising for this event close to a little over a month now. So. We left flyers at the Senior Citizen Center, and we also announced it during a community council meeting as well. Okay, so that concludes the Westside Housing Forum. I would like to thank everyone for their attendance tonight. Thank you so much for coming out, asking very informative questions. And also, before you leave, I would like you to visit our resource table where the Housing Rights Center, CAUSE, VCCDC, the Housing Authority have their QR code available for you. And you know, a number of organizations have available resources and information. So please visit the table. Also visit Veronica, who has a lot of information before you leave. And like I said, once again, thank you so much for coming to the Westside Housing Forum.